Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad. And a very warm welcome to this long overdue Doctor Who video. If you're a Doctor Who fan, you should be following me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad. And here on YouTube, Movies TV Mad. Now, I don't do Doctor Who videos consistently every day or once a week. When I have something Doctor Who based to talk about, I will talk about it, and I think that's the way to do Doctor Who videos. I adore Doctor Who. I'm a huge fan. On this video, I want to address the news that Russell T Davies has committed his long-term future to Doctor Who. I have some thoughts on that. But also, I want to have a long overdue debate with my fellow Doctor Who fandom. And it's about the Doctor, the 10th Doctor, deposing Harriet Jones. I think this is a very interesting debate, a long overdue debate, and I want to have it. I want to ask, was the Doctor right to depose Harriet Jones? And I think it's going to be a very fun and interesting debate. But first, let's react to the news that Russell T Davies, the genius writer who brought back Doctor Who, legend that he is, has committed his long-term future to Doctor Who, which says he's going to spend more than the 4 years on the show, or 5 years on the show he did before. He needs to. Now, Doctor Who was very close to being cancelled yet again. In the history of Doctor Who, it was cancelled by Michael Grade after the Sylvester McCoy era. Basically, they got it wrong, it lost viewers, it died, but it stayed on Big Finish, and Big Finish, the audio adventures of Doctor Who, and comic books and magazines and novelizations kept the good fight going, kept the good name of Doctor Who going through those barren years. Russell T Davies came back, asked Jane Tranter if she would allow him to bring it back. She said, "Russell, it's you, as it's you, yes, absolutely." Everyone was very, very excited. He brought Doctor Who kicking and screaming back into the 21st century. It hadn't been on air since the 20th century. It hadn't been on air since the Paul McGann ill-fated movie. A movie, by the way, I absolutely love. But that was supposed to be a pilot of a TV series. I was gutted it didn't happen because personally, I loved that film, warts and all. Russell T Davies made a big mistake. He walked out on Doctor Who in 2009, never looking back, never leaving any connections, passing the mantle to Stephen Moffat. I'm a big fan of the Moff. I think Stephen Moffat has a vast, great imagination, but he as a showrunner doesn't work. As a storyteller, he's fantastic. He just wants to tell his stories. And he doesn't care if they're controversial. He doesn't care if people see his storytelling illogical. He wants to tell his story. So what he was doing is sometimes he was kind of controversial and he upset people, which affected the bottom line of Doctor Who, the ratings. Where Russell T Davies' era of Doctor Who had a structure. It knew what to do. It wanted to please the audience. It wanted to excite the audience. And it even know Russell's stories and one-word arcs such as Bad Wolf and Torchwood and Harold Saxon were absolute genius. It had a structure and it wouldn't step over that structure. Russell T Davies is the ultimate storyteller and showrunner. Now, Russell just let the whole show go. He walked away. He had enough of the BBC. He was saying things like he'd never make a Doctor Who movie with the BBC, which is interesting because now he's singing the praises of the BBC. He's defending the BBC, while they're coming under attack from the Tory government. I understand that. I think the BBC is a great institution, but they're also not perfect, and there's some things that they're going to have to deal with to get more public support. So I get it. But he left Doctor Who without looking back. And then we went from, Russell T Davies to Stephen Moffat. After 7 years, Stephen Moffat was desperate to get away from Doctor Who. The fans went against him. It was a horrible, in the end, it was horrible for Stephen, and he just wanted out. So then he hands it over to another Doctor Who fan, which is Chris Chibnall. Chris Chibnall nearly got the show cancelled. Basically, he's even spoken about him having to fight to get Doctor Who Flux on the air. The BBC wanted out. Russell T Davies brought back Doctor Who. It was his legacy. He was never going to allow it to go anywhere. The issue with Chris Chibnall isn't representation, isn't inclusion, isn't the point of having a female Doctor. It's that creatively he gave none of his characters, including his first female Doctor, any interesting characterizations. And my abiding memory will be of Graham, played by the fantastic, fabulous, ultra-talented Bradley Walsh, telling the Doctor he fears his cancer has come back, and the 13th Doctor didn't give a shit. This was supposed to show us and, justify criticisms of this bland, uninteresting Doctor of being, an awkward, that the Doctor's always been awkward around these kind of things. Even the Master wouldn't have reacted that cold-heartedly to a human being fearing that their cancer is coming back. Imagine the people suffering with cancer watching Doctor Who at that time. It was absolutely disastrous. He said he went on Doctor Who to be representative and inclusive, but you got it wrong. That's not what you did, Chris. What you did was tokenism. What's tokenism? When you throw a minority or a woman in a role, do nothing with them and say, well, they're standing in front of you. Isn't that enough? The only thing he got right was his Master. Of course, that was a very representative and inclusive piece of casting from Sacha Dhawan. But Sacha Dhawan knocked it out the park. Chris's writing for Sacha Dhawan knocked it out the park. No question about that. This is a bitter and angry Master. This is really probably the first Master that absolutely hates the Doctor, wants to kill the Doctor, and the Doctor disgusts him. The Doctor disgusts him because he discovers the Doctor isn't what he thought she was. That she's the timeless child. That she's better than him. That she has a mysterious past that he doesn't understand. So this was a very interesting version of the Master. I think Dhawan should be kept as the Master. I don't think he will. And also, Chris Chibnall didn't really like to explain his stories. He brought in the first black female Doctor, Jo Martin, as the fugitive Doctor. Now, what's interesting about her Doctor, Chris's writing, and Jo's performance as this Doctor in one episode blew up what Jodie Whittaker was doing and what Chibnall was doing for Whittaker's 13th Doctor. She was a superior Doctor. Did we get an explanation on who she was? No. We saw her in one episode and that was it. She came back for 2 or 3 cameos where she didn't play the character we were introduced to. Like the Timeless Child, he didn't explain what he was doing. He felt he didn't have to. Now, he argued about the Timeless Child, saying that ultimately nobody wants to know the Doctor's origins. So why did you do the biggest hot take in Doctor Who and television history if you can't expand on it because nobody wants to give the Doctor an origin story? You gave the Doctor an origin story by making her the Timeless Child. That's the point. You failed, Chris. You failed in your mission to be inclusive and representative. You failed. All you succeeded in doing was tokenism. The first female black Doctor, you used her once in a full episode, and now she's been reduced to Big Finish. Not disrespecting Big Finish in any way. That's not good inclusion. That's not good representation, Chris. All this stuff I'm talking about are the consequences that is the genius of Russell T Davies walking away from Doctor Who and not looking back. There were rumours of him coming back for so very long. I said it at the time. Everyone is free to move on with their lives and their careers and their creative ambitions. Russell had every right to leave Doctor Who. He had done his bit. But I said at the time it wouldn't take up his career or ruin his other plans for the other stuff he wanted to do by having a godfather role over Stephen Moffat or whoever the showrunner was going to be in the future. So he can make the big decisions, make decisions about spin-offs. If Stephen Moffat got carried away, as he often did, bless him, Russell T Davies could have knocked it on the head. And if he was there during the discussions for The Timeless Child, Russell would have knocked it on the head. Of course, Russell and Stephen don't agree with The Timeless Child, but they can't publicly say it. So they said it's fine, you know, what's canon? Canon can be messed around with, so what? They don't believe that. Canonically, they didn't mess with Doctor Who. Let's be clear here. Now, they cast, Russell T Davies cast 2 straight white male doctors. I'm not saying you can't cast anyone else from a minority. We've got the first black male as the Doctor. And I celebrate it. I celebrate it because Ncuti is one of the best young actors on the circuit. And also Russell knew he couldn't cast another straight white male, doctor in this environment because he would have been attacked for not casting another female. So he thought, how do I get away with this? I know, I'll cast a black man, but not just any black man, one of the most talented young actors on the circuit. I know I'll cast a young woman as the companion who's one of the most talented young actors on the circuit. She has proved that on Coronation Street. We've got a lot to look forward to. Bring on November for the 60th anniversary special. So Russell, in my opinion, and I said it on my platforms at the time, should have taken a godfather role. The Chris Chibnall era of Doctor Who, as a Doctor Who fan, makes me feel like I felt on Sunday as a Manchester United fan when Liverpool thrashed us 7-0. It's an anomaly, it's not right, it doesn't work, and the problem with Chibnall's Doctor Who isn't the diversity or representation, it's the tokenism. It's the tokenism that doesn't work because he was too lazy to make the first female Doctor the best Doctor. Imagine making the first female Doctor as awesome as Hartnell and, all the other Doctors, right? We've had 13 Doctors. Well, actually, we've had more than 13 Doctors if you count John Hurt as well. So there's been so many. Look, I think they've all been great in their own right. I mean, some people love Jodie Whittaker. For some people, Jodie Whittaker is the best Doctor. And that's cool. And that's okay. Troughton was amazing. Pertwee was amazing. Baker was amazing. Davison was amazing. For everyone, every Doctor has been amazing. Different people have enjoyed this character played by different actors. But Chris Chibnall failed. And we got to the Chibnall era because Russell T Davies had the passion to bring it back as a Doctor Who fan, but then he just walked away from it. It was a mistake. I mean, one day Russell T Davies won't be able to work on Doctor Who, and they're going to need another answer. And ultimately, one day, someone's going to come on, totally ruin it, and it will be cancelled. And that's a shame. I believe they need to move away from this Doctor Who talented fandom country club that they've set up. I mean, it's pretty unique for a television show and a franchise to have this group of people running it who are actually Doctor Who fans, who actually went and studied together, who know each other. It's interesting. You've got Davies, Moffat, Gatiss, all these different people who I think in different elements of the revival have done a great job. So it's very, very exciting for me that Russell T Davies has committed his future. He's committed his future because he knows real damage has been done to this franchise and this IP, and he's the only person who's willing and talented enough to fix it, who will write great characterizations and great versions of these Doctor Who characters and, new characters and, new versions of the Doctor. And, he said at the beginning he wouldn't have come back if he couldn't do something different. The only worry for me is that Russell T Davies doesn't go all 2023. He made some very interesting comments during the build-up and marketing to Nolly, which was the biopic for Noel Gordon. Very anti-male stuff he was saying. Do I believe he believes half of the stuff he was saying? No. He wants to sound all 2023. So we'll see if the extremism of Chibnall with Doctor Who and the bland characterizations continue with Russell T Davies? I suspect not. Russell T Davies is a genius. He's here to bring the fans back to Doctor Who, to put butts on seats. He's proven before that he can pull off Doctor Who in the modern day, and hopefully he can do it again. So I'm very happy he's committed his future to Doctor Who. I think it's excellent, it's brilliant, and he should never have left. He should have had a Godfather role from the beginning. He should have been the boss from the beginning. He should have been the Kevin Feige while having people running it day to day. That was the mistake that Russell made. He now knows that's a mistake. He's back, and so far he's made some very, very exciting decisions. How this plays out, how this will be different to what he did originally, will be a very interesting situation. Now, I want to talk about the Doctor deposing Harriet Jones in the Christmas invasion. Now, the Doctor first met Harriet Jones when she was an MP for Flydale North. In the two-part adventure, basically when the Slevene family, let me see if I can say this right, Raxocorical Farapatorius, did I say it right anyway? Invade Earth. It's a two-part adventure, and the Doctor unites with this MP to fight them. And they become a team, and they become friends. Now, in the Christmas invasion, she is now the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. There's another invasion by an alien race called the Sycorax. Now, all throughout the episode, she's asking her army lieutenant if Torchwood is ready. This really is the first mention of Torchwood, but we did know there was a TV spin-off for Doctor Who called Torchwood in development at the time, so hearing those words was very exciting. So in the end, the Doctor defeats the Sycorax. He sends them back to send out a warning to say that the Earth is defended. All of a sudden, a big laser beam out the sky shoots down their ship. The Doctor is horrified, offended, and angry at Harriet Jones. He then whispers to her assistant. This is basically the mesmerizing talent of the Time Lords. They're basically somewhat hypnotic, and they can be very suggestive to the weak mind, and this is what he does. And he says to the guy, don't you think she looks tired? This infers in her brain and everyone's brain, they doubt her, and she has to step down in the end. The question I'm asking you is, was the Doctor right to depose Harriet Jones? This is a very interesting situation. She shoots that ship down. Basically, that means they don't go back to outer space and warn everyone not to come to Earth because it's protected by the Doctor. The Doctor's a legend. Everybody knows who he is in space. They would have been too intimidated to invade Earth. By the Sycorax not being able to go to space and not being able to warn everyone not to come to Earth, so many alien races have invaded Earth since the Sycorax did. So there's the consequences of that. But by the Doctor deposing Harriet Jones, if he didn't depose her, maybe Harold Saxon, aka the Master, wouldn't have been able to become Prime Minister. Now, I'm not definitely sure on this because the Master has the same mesmerising hypnotic abilities as the Doctor. He could have put suggestions in people's mind to depose Harriet Jones or whoever was Prime Minister at the time, and he still could have become the Prime Minister. He probably would have been. But it's a very interesting question. I can understand Harriet Jones wanting to shoot down the Sycorax. She was scared that they would warn others or tell others about the Earth. But she was working on panic and fear. Ultimately, whether you shoot down the Sycorax or not, there's aliens out there. They know the Earth is there. And the problem is the Doctor himself. It's only when Clark arrives in Smallville and when, some Kryptonian insurgents know he's around that they come to Earth and there's more threats on the Earth. Clark coming to Smallville brings the kryptonite with him, creates kryptonite mutants in the TV show. So the hero often is also the problem. It's very, very complicated. So there's going to be more alien incursions whether Harriet Jones shoots down the Sycorax ship or not. But she's very human. She thinks if we kill them, they can't tell others about us and they can't come back. But ultimately, it's like Batfleck, what he says in BVS. You know, criminals are like weeds. You get rid of another, you get rid of one, and another takes its place. And I think that's a brilliant, apt piece of dialogue. It's always kind of, you know, Superman always gets this accusation and criticism of his no-kill policy. If you kill them, they can't come back. But if you kill them, more will come back. And in the end, you have to live with being exactly what you're fighting. The Doctor warned them not to come back. That was enough. So I think it was very ruthless of the Doctor to depose Harriet Jones. I think what was the die in her cast was when she asked the Doctor if he's just another alien threat that has to be dealt with. When she did that, he knew that once pushed, she could be dangerous not only to him, but to maybe, you know, good alien life that's coming to explore the Earth. Because they don't really explain to us what political party she's a part of. I'm going to make the assumption and say that she was Labour and the previous people maybe were Tories. I don't know, because the Prime Minister, who they find dead in World War III and Aliens of London, kind of looks like Tony Blair. So maybe it was Labour in power all along. Who knows? So I think that both Harriet Jones and the Doctor can both take responsibility for this situation. But this is a more ruthless Doctor. David Tennant proves in The Christmas Invasion and in New Earth, by the way, when he talks about if you're looking for a higher power, there isn't one, and he screams, "How many? How many?" When he does that, you can see he's a much darker Doctor than Eccleston. A lot of people think Eccleston is the darkest Doctor, or even that Capaldi is the darkest Doctor. They're not. David Tennant is the darkest Doctor we've ever had in the revival. And what you see him do in the Waters of Mars and in the Christmas Invasion is ruthless. When he's pushed, when he's hurt, when he hasn't got, I mean, not even Rose. Rose didn't even try to stop him from doing what he did to Harriet Jones. Rose stopped him from killing a Dalek. Think about that for a minute. So I think even his companions at that time thought, you know, Harriet Jones, you were wrong. And I mean, the problem is, Rose can stop the Doctor and persuade him from doing a lot of things. It's interesting when we look at New Earth. You know, in the second episode, End of the World of season 1 with Christopher Eccleston, he's quite happy to let Cassandra die. But in season 2's New Earth, he shows her more compassion. He allows her to talk to her younger self and lets her die with dignity. And that's really, really interesting to me. But when it came to Harriet Jones, he didn't show the same compassion. In fact, when we see her return in season 4 to go against the, you know, the Daleks and Davros, we don't actually see the Doctor and Harriet Jones in the same scene. It's a separate scene where Harriet is talking to the other companions, or as Davros calls them, the children of time. So she mentions about being deposed by the Doctor, and she made the point in the Christmas Invasion that you're not always here, Doctor. We have to deal with these things ourselves. And she had to make a decision. So she still stood by her decision to shoot down the Sycorax. So it's a very, very complicated debate, everyone. It really is. Because I think I can kind of see. Harriet Jones is a bit like Thanos in Infinity War and Endgame, where we were all having this debate, wasn't we? Is Thanos right or wrong? Well, Thanos has got a good little system. The problem is he's deciding who lives and dies. I can see why Thanos wants to do what he does, but he's quite happy to kill off a bunch of people. But he survives. He's the one who decides who lives and dies. That's the problem. It's a God complex. And what Harriet Jones has here is a God complex. She's saying human life is more valuable than alien life. Now, these people, these aliens have come to hurt us. They're a threat, but the threat has passed. You know, you can't kill, it's like the Minority Report story. Once you start imprisoning people before they do something, it becomes rather problematic because you want to create a perfect world where people are not under threat, but that's not how life works. Life is about risk and danger. That's how we become better. That's how we learn from our mistakes. If we don't have any pain in our life, if we don't have to fight for what's right and what's good and what's proper, we don't understand what it's like to fight, and we become overindulged people, just like this generation in the real world. President Biden is fighting World War III in Ukraine because this generation have been wrapped up in cotton wool and couldn't handle fighting a World War III. Like the young people in World War II, they were weary, they were able, they'd experienced shit, they've been through depressions, they were able to fight a war. But this generation couldn't rough it. They'd be too busy being offended by Putin and saying he's offensive to them, where the young men and the young women who were all doing their bit during World War II, imagine having to go underground with these air raid bunkers, being afraid of being wiped out at any moment. Imagine that world. Fascinating, isn't it? Could we handle that world? Could we handle that life? No. That's why World War III is being fought in Ukraine. The Ukrainian people are being sacrificed because the West see them as lesser individuals. It's interesting, isn't it? It's a very interesting debate. And this is the debate here where Harriet Jones takes this kind of right-wing approach. This is our planet. We don't want any foreign alien incursions. We're going to blow them away so they don't come back. It's very, very interesting. And by making that decision, the doctor decides he has to depose her because basically she's showing a rule of thumb. She's having an opinion that the doctor doesn't like. Now, it's not like the doctor hasn't been tempted in killing before. Now, I haven't watched every single classic episode. I can't tell you if the doctor's ever killed before. I remember there was a bit of controversy when Matt Smith's doctor allowed, David Bradley's character to die. I know David Bradley has played the first Doctor, but he also played a villain in, I think, the seventh season of the Doctor Who revival. I think that was one of the final episodes with Amy and Rory, if you remember that. There was a lot of controversy there. So I think the Doctor the Doctor isn't a murderer, but I think the Doctor has allowed people to die before. Christian Bale's Batman allows Ra's al Ghul to die in Batman Begins. He goes, I'm not going to kill you, but I don't have to save you either. So it's a kind of manslaughter situation. Harriet Jones murders the Sycorax. It's as simple as that. And as I say, she's the Prime Minister. She's making a decision. But there's a lot of immorality in that decision, but also she's just seen her people killed. She's seen what these aliens are capable of. So I understand where she's coming from her point of view. Now, it's all right for the Doctor, as Harriet Jones says, you come and go. Basically, he's this immortal being that can change, he can regenerate. Now, I've always said it's not black and white. He can't just snap his fingers and regenerate, but the Doctor isn't always around. The Doctor is an observer. He's a traveller. He wants to observe the entire universe. And I think the Doctor is very, very irresponsible. So I think what happens is with this situation, the Doctor reacts. The Doctor is very reactive. And I think if the Doctor thought about that now, the Doctor would regret deposing Harriet Jones. There should have been a discussion, but she has killed the Sycorax. The Doctor decided to let them live. Now, who is the Doctor to decide who lives and dies? We've been talking about this God complex with Thanos and Harriet Jones. Well, the Doctor kind of has his own God complex as well. The Doctor decides which ones of his enemies deserve to live and die. The Daleks aren't human beings. There's some kind of mutated, cloned creature inside this shell. Now, the Daleks don't have feelings. They've purged their feelings and, they're literally all the same. They all have the same faults. You know, it's basically kill anything that's different. And that's another debate. Do the Daleks deserve to die? But ultimately, they're ruthless creatures that will kill you, but they're very hard to kill anyway. So this is a debate that can go on and on and on. And I think it's an overdue debate, and I think it's an interesting one, because after 20 minutes of talking about this, or 15 minutes of talking about this, I still can't decide if the Doctor was right to depose Harriet Jones. Was she right? Was she wrong? I think there's wrong and right on both sides. But let me know what you think. Was the Doctor right to depose Harriet Jones? This has been Movies TV Mad with me, Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you never miss this beautiful perfection. And I'll see you again in the next video. Until I see you again, goodbye, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen.